All right, let's do it. First of all, thank you so much for everyone here. Good morning, good afternoon. And today I'm excited to have everyone over. Let's talk a little bit about, building secure edge networks with better routing norms for internet. I will be your host. My name is Victor Oliboni. I am a customer success manager here at Azion. And before we get into anything, I have some really good news to share with you guys. So the next slide, you will see some exciting things. We have special present for you guys here at the webinar today. MANRS is giving us 3 months of a observatory access to their product, and with that, Azion is also giving $1,000 credit for you guys to use with the products. So go ahead and use that. Get your feet wet with the products for both companies and enjoy it. So getting a little bit into the webinar today, both of our presenters here are awesome guys. We have Aftab Siddiqui. He is the Senior Manager Internet Technology at MANRS. He has more than 15 years of experience in the service providing industry. Currently, Aftab is serving as the co-lead of MANRS initiative at Internet Society. MANRS are, mutually agreed norms for routing society, is a global community-driven initiative encouraging network service providers, internet exchange points, cloud and CDN operators to implement basic network security and measure to secure the global routing systems. AJ Gupta, he is our product marketing director here at Azion, and he is responsible for overall product marketing strategy for the edge computing platform. In the past, he has worked in many small startups and big companies in various areas, include networking, cloud, virtualization, and security. So go ahead and say hi to them. They will be our speakers today, and get ready for some really cool information. Next slide. It's a quick slide just to show you guys our agenda. So we'll go through here. The way it's going to work is we're going to start the webinar with a quick Azion overview. Then we get into the routing incidents and threats, MANRS solutions, Azion network and edge security, Azion compliance with MANRS, executive summary, and then we'll finish with our Q&A. So if you guys have any questions throughout the webinar, go ahead and send them in our chat. We'll get into those questions throughout the webinar or at the end of it, whatever is easier for our speakers. But let's get into this quick overview of Azion. So the idea of Azion is to simplify how you build and run modern applications. We try to bring the future to the present here. The idea is for you to build and run that anywhere on Azion's operated network edge, remote devices, on-premise, and multi-cloud. So like it says right there, turbocharge your innovation with edge computing. It's the future and the present here, and we have some awesome things in store for you guys. And you might ask yourself, why Azion? Because Azion gives you the opportunity to discover many possibilities. The quick slide will show you a quick overview of what we have on the table. We go from future-proof apps, purposely built edge compute engine for low latency applications and real-time data analysis. We know how data is important nowadays. It's open, enterprise-grade open, edge platform, fully programmable, extensible, developer-friendly, so you can build on your own terms. It's reliable, and I think the most important part, especially into 2022, it's security-centric. So we're focused here in making the security visible for you guys, end-to-end, programmable, but we also run on zero trust security, something that we'll get into later on the webinar, and it's a very important part of it. And in my opinion, the most exciting part of Azion is this next slide, is something that I keep looking at it because it changes month to month. This is or edge locations across the world. So those dots is Azion, is the presence of Azion in specific country, continent, in the world. We are constantly growing. Like I said, it changes month to month because we're constantly adding new edge locations, bringing more security, bringing low latency for you guys. And as you can see in the numbers right there, we have 40 plus telecom internet service providers, over 100,000 e-commerce worldwide. They rely on Azion for security, latency, and so on. 35 multi-billion-dollar retailers are running on Azion. 20 billion plus requests to financial services delivered every month. Security is very important for those guys, so they always can count on Azion for that. But without further ado, I'll let our speakers take over. We'll start with FTAB. So go ahead, Bud. Get it going with some awesome information. Oh yeah, sorry guys. Before FTAB gets into it, here's a really cool question. Go ahead and answer. You know, don't lie to us. Go ahead and tell the truth. But it's just so we get a good feeling of who we're talking to here, and we'll get going with FTAB once we have the results. And should be good to go. All right. So got some people, some answers here. Really cool. FTAB, as you can see, some people are here to know more about MANRS. So it's with you, bud.
Hey, thank you, Victor, for that. And hello, everyone. Good morning from the place down under. We call it Sydney. I hope I'll be able to share some information with you about the routing security problems and what MANRS is doing. So by the end of the session, you will be able to say that you know about MANRS. Right, so moving on with the problem first, that what we are trying to address. Next slide. Yes. If you are looking at this picture and wondering what is this, well, it's a picture of 3 napkins, and whatever is written on these napkins is actually running the whole internet at the moment. And it's been running like this for last 30 odd years. This is a scribbling of a protocol called BGP, Border Gateway Protocol, which some of the researchers were having lunch during one of the IETF, which is Internet Engineering Task Force meeting, and they decided to come up with a protocol, and they wrote it down on the back of a napkin during the lunch hour. And that protocol is still working today, which is BGP. Of course, there are many changes in that one, but the base structure remains the same. Next. Well, Yakov Rector was one of the scribbler of that protocol, one of the person who designed that protocol. And his words, if you can read, and it will give you a clear understanding of what is going to come afterwards, is short-term solution tend to stay with us for a long time, and long-term solution tend to never happen. So it was supposed to be a short-term solution at that time because there was a problem. They were trying to address that problem. But 30 years forward, we still using the same protocol. Next. So what is the problem again? Imagine 30 odd years ago, when some researchers and people from the universities, academia, was sitting on a round table trying to address the internet of that time, was mostly academics and the research institutes connecting to each other, sending emails and doing other stuff. So there was no sense of insecurity between all these institutions, all the people who were exchanging information. So there was no built-in validation in the system. There was no chain of trust between, there was no requirement to have a chain of trust because everyone knew everybody else at that time. So it was based on the honor system. I trust you, you trust me. Unfortunately, it is still based on the same honor system, which is the trust system, that whatever you are saying is correct. As long as I am able to verify it through some means, that's it. There is nothing in the protocol itself which can block it. Next. Right. So when you say that, well, of course, it is a problem for an IT system, or it is a problem for the internet, why I am worried about it. Well, the problem is uh, when there is insecurity, or when there is a problem within the architecture of the internet, it causes real world problem. Um, you face it in terms of inaccessibility to the website you are trying to access, or there are much bigger consequences because our finances are now based on the internet. We use internet banking, we use our credit cards a lot for purchasing and everything. So it has a lot of impact on our day-to-day life if there is something happening on the internet. Next. And this is what happens, that these are some of the very recent incidents from the 2022, when a network in the in Russia hijacked the Twitter traffic, and all of a sudden Twitter traffic started going through Russia and was black holing. It was a BGP attack, and secondly, a South Korean cryptocurrency platform, ClaySwap. It was also hijacked through BGP, and people lost almost $2 million worth of their crypto assets through this hijack. It was very well managed, but yes, of course, they used the BGP for this attack. So you can understand that it's not just you cannot access a website. There are some grave consequences if the security is not maintained properly. Next.
So after we have another question here
Yeah.
about the topic. So guys, go ahead. Also get those answers in there for us, please. All right, so here's the results. All right, some people are thinking about it.
Okay, so at least we have given them an idea that it is not very secure. So moving on, so there are three main topics, or three important issues we are trying to deal with at the moment. One is called the prefix or the route hijacked, route leak, and IP address spoofing. I'll give a very brief introduction of all three of them in a way that prefix or route hijack is something that when you connect to the internet, you need an IP address. It could be IPv4 or IPv6, right? And then you announce it to the world via BGP, using the BGP protocol, saying, hello, everyone, these are my IP addresses. And if you want to reach me, if you want to reach out to me, then you can reach out to me through these IP addresses. And then you announce it to the world through your network services provider or ISP, which you are connected with, and they announce it to their connected peers, and the rest of the world knows it through this process. If someone start announcing your addresses, IP addresses, and say, well, I am Aftab rather than Aftab himself, then there should be a mechanism to verify that who is actually Aftab. So when someone else try to use my IP addresses, it is called a prefix or a route hijack, right? Second one is a route leak. Because when I announced it to my service provider, they had to send it to different service providers of their own, because everyone is connected to each other. And what they can do is they can only announce it to someone which is not very trustable, and say, well, if you want to reach to Aftab, you can go through a third party, which people may or may not trust. And it is eventually the traffic will be routed through them, will be coming through them, and they can see what is on the traffic, that what people are looking at in my network. It is called route leak. I mean, you still reach me, you still get the content, but it can be eavesdropped. It can be severally disrupted because maybe they don't want me to get all the requests, and they put a threshold on it and create all sorts of problems. IP address spoofing is not directly related to BGP or any routing protocol itself. It is when I say something, for example, if I send you an SMS or a WhatsApp or a Telegram message, you know who I am because you can see my phone number, and most likely my phone number is in your contact list, and you can see that, okay, it is coming from Aftab. But for example, if I change my number with somebody else and try to send you the message, you will say, well, that is somebody else. So even though that someone has not sent you any message, it was me. That is called IP address spoofing. When I change my own IP address and pretend it to be somebody else. What happens is when you respond back, you do not respond back to me because the IP address or the phone number is of someone else. You will respond back to that someone, and that someone will be a bit overwhelmed that, okay, why you're responding to me? I didn't ask you for anything. And if I try to do this, like for example 10,000 times, and spoof somebody else's IP addresses, that someone will get 10,000 responses, and they will be overwhelmed as well, saying, I have no idea what is happening. So these are the three big problems we are trying to address from MANRS. So let me explain what and how. Next. Yes. So this is what the explanation is. If you want to read, you can have a look and read it at the later stage. Next. Now, how big the problem is. So these are the statistics from 2021, from last year. You can see every day we have recorded through publicly available data sources that you can read the blog which I wrote earlier this year, where we have explained how we are collecting the data and how we are counting these problems. So you can see every day there was a problem, around 4 to 5 per day. Sometimes there are more than 10, sometimes there are more than 5 or 6, but not a single day go by without a route hijack incident. Most of them are by mistake. We know that because they are very short-lived, and you can see. I mean, we don't know the intentions, but you can see that it is most likely a mistake because they are corrected very quickly. But some of them are not. They are malicious in intent, and of course happens because to create a disruption. Next slide. Yes, and this is the route leak count for 2021. Same thing, around 1 to 2 incidents almost every day. There are a few days where nothing happens. Lucky that that day, but yeah, again, it is very common. And the biggest issue is that people don't know that it is happening that commonly on the internet. Next. And now this is the map of the IP address spoofing measurement done by a institute called CAIDA, CAIDA. They have this project called Spoofer Project. Their URL is at the bottom of the slide. You can have a look. They measure IP address spoofing from each network around the world. The only problem is that you have to run a software to test if your network is allowing spoof traffic or not. So it has to be done from inside the network rather than can be measured from outside. So if you can, please download a small software and just run it once. It will measure if your network which you are using or the ISP you are using is allowing spoof traffic or not. Next. Now, let's talk about the solution. The solution, well, there can be many solutions. You can say there are prefix and AS path filtering, RPKI, IRR toolset, BGP sec is now being standard solution, is a standard now. But there are, you cannot say just okay, implement everything. There has to be what we call it, there has to be a method to the madness. And as one of the very prominent figure in the community and one of the steering committee member of MANRS, Melchior Elements, said it very nicely that when you look at the way the internet has scaled, there's now no way to know everything that everyone is announcing on the internet. So that's why we rely on BGP. So we use some bandages to make sure that whatever is happening is correct. We try to make it as reliable as possible. Next. And this is where MANRS comes in, mutually agreed norms for routing security. It provided the baseline for all the routing security issues, which we have just mentioned. Next. I will not gonna go into the details of, we have 3 programs distinctly, 4 programs distinctly. One is for network operators, another one for IXPs, third is for CD and cloud providers, where Azion is our one of the participant, and the fourth one is for the vendors who manufacture equipment or write code for the routing daemons. I'll just give you a quick overview for the network operators program, which is because this is the basis of our all program. There's slight variations, but all the programs have these at least these 4 basic ingredients in it. Number one is filtering. What we are preaching, that whatever comes into your network, you should be able to make a informed decision that whatever is coming is correct, that you should filter. And whatever you are announcing to the world, you have to make sure that you only announce what you are allowed to announce. If you are a custodian of some IP addresses resources, please make sure that you only announce that and nothing further. And similarly, if you are a service provider and if you have downstream customers, make sure that you filter them as well, both ways. Whatever they are announcing, you filter it out, and whatever you are announcing to them, you filter that out as well, making sure that your pipe remains clean as much as possible. If every network operator perform the same thing, the internet will be very reliable moving forward. Anti-spoofing, so that is which I explained what spoofing is. So anti-spoofing, there are some measures that you can implement in your network and do not allow any spoof traffic out of it, because anti-spoofing is one of the biggest reason for denial of service attacks, which happens all across the internet. So if you implement that, it will curb a lot of DDoS attacks in the world. Coordination is something, a soft, I would say, change we are expecting network operators to implement, is if there is a problem in your network, or if there is a problem where your network is impacted, there should be there should be an email address, there should be a phone number where I can contact you. So make sure that your information is up to date and valid, so that when there is an incident, I should be able to reach out to you. Global validation is a bit tricky. I will explain it in the very last slide as well. But global validation is, I should be able to verify you by using data sources which is available to everyone, and say, okay, if Aftab is announcing an IP address, he is actually the legitimate owner of these IP addresses. So make sure that your information is available on the IRR, which is called the Internet Routing Registry databases, or through RPKI, which is Resource Public Key Infrastructure. I'll give a quick overview right at the end, so don't worry about that. So these are the 4 basic actions we are recommending for network operators. But if you implement that, you are a managed participant. And those, if you go onto our website on manrs.org, you will find that we have more than 850 participants who actually implement these actions, and Azion is one of them. Next. So these are the actions for the IXPs. There's a slight difference, but the crux remains the same, that you have to implement these actions. Next. This is for the CDN and cloud program. You can see that the number of actions are increasing as for different programs. Not every action is mandatory, but most of them are. But the bottom line remains the same, that you have to filter. You have to make sure that your coordination, your contact information is up to date, and you also implement RPKI or IRR based route validation or global validation. And of course, we also expect networks to make sure, CDNs and cloud providers to ensure their customers are implementing some of these measures as well. Next. So what else can be done? Where do we go from here? As I said, BGP remains the only routing protocol of the internet. If you want to connect to the internet, if you want to connect your network to the internet, BGP is the only way. Of course, you can do it via static route, but of course, if you have your own IP addresses and your own ASN, then of course you would like to run a routing protocol, and BGP is the only one. So you have to use measures to ensure that that it is safe. There are certain, so whatever we have discussed, these are all features within the BGP. There are more enhancement coming up in BGP. Another one is called BGP Sec. It's a further enhancement to the BGP protocol, which is called BGP Security, BGP Sec. It's a slightly different protocol, but of course an enhanced version of the BGP. Another one is called ASPA, which is still a draft. It hasn't been finalized. Another one is called the AS cones. These are more features added to BGP rather than changing the BGP itself. So we can do all of them, or we can move, or we can implement, or we can start implementing the actions which MANRS is promoting, and secure the internet for everyone. Moving on. Origin validation. You can go to either of these websites and check if the ISP you are using is actually doing the route origin validation using RPKI. RPKI is another feature which you can use to verify the information on the internet, called Resource Public Key Infrastructure. So if you are online right now, please go and check these websites and see if it is coming green or not. Next. Quickly, you can go to the MANRS Observatory, observatory.manrs.org. Most importantly, what we believe, that if you do not know what is happening on the internet, it's very hard for anyone to implement these actions. That's why we have this public observatory. You can go and have a look, check the country, check the region. But if you want to check your own ASN, you have to sign up for the MANRS. And as Victor explained in the beginning, we are giving some free access to some of the operators who would like to sign up. Then we can give a free access for 3 months, and you can evaluate your own network, that how your your network is behaving on the internet. Next. And if you want to learn more, please go to our website. We have training courses, as we have self-learning courses, and we organize workshops every month. So you can sign up for that as well. Please go check our website as well. And this is where I end and hand it over back to Victor.
Thank you, FTAB. I'll go ahead and send it to AJ. AJ, it's with you now, bud.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you, FTAB, for outlining some of the recommendations for keeping the internet secure. Azion being a founding member of the MANRS. So I'm going to focus a little bit now on on the secure edge network of Azion. What are the things that we are doing to keep our edge network secure, and some of the use cases that results as a result of that secure network. First of all, let me quickly focus on to the, if you go back to the previous slide here, let me quickly quickly focus on a few things here. I think as Victor outlined earlier, we have a very decentralized and highly distributed architecture actually that goes all the way from the North America and Latin America, Europe. We are very highly present. We are present in the APAC and Sydney, Australia, from Aftab's home location, and Africa too. Our edge locations are very carefully chosen to be placed inside the ISPs or IXPs or even the tier 1 service provider. The thing I would like to highlight here is the latency of 30 milliseconds actually here, which really takes us basically from any node to any node within the US and Americas in around 30 milliseconds or less. That really kind of helps us to deliver the performance, availability, and resiliency. So the speed and scalability is really the name of the game here. After I've talked about a lot more onto the number of ASN locations, so we have a very selective peering policy, but let me quickly jump on some of the things that come out as a result of this optimized network. Azion Edge Network really helps us to leverage some of the use cases for the edge. That means being able to really build and scale with the serverless applications on the full stack edge platform, which means all you need to do is just write the code and do not worry about the underlying infrastructure. You can write the code in any language of your choice. You can use Java, you can use WebAssembly, JavaScript, Python, Rust, Jamstack, Next.js development environment. So the main thing really is you're just busy writing the edge native applications, or you can actually, in fact, modernize your existing legacy application for application acceleration purposes. And one more thing I wanted to point out here from the Azion Edge Network use cases is it's not just about building the applications. It's also about how you deploy and deliver those applications with this, what we call the excellent user experiences through things like image processing, image optimization, the throughput that goes on the edge network here. Just an example of some of the applications that our users have actually been using our network for, like e-commerce application, fintech applications, face voice recognition, edge AI, IoT, location-based services. These applications can run from anywhere, whether you're talking on the edge platform or you're talking on the remote devices, or you're talking multi-cloud or on-premises actually. So the major point here is the Azion Edge platform empowers you to with this low latency secure platform, which is highly fault tolerant, and with the real-time management on the platform. Let's quickly talk about our security, which is exactly, let's talk about the security that we provide all the way from network level to the application layer security. If you look at our security approach, we have what we call a defense in depth, a multi-layered security, which means security is built in and it's not what we call bolted later. So it has to be what some folks call it invisible security. Some folks call it a shift left approach, where security is moving more and more into the sort of the supply or the software chain from a CI/CD perspective. We leverage what Victor alluded to earlier from a security perspective, an approach called zero trust. What zero trust is implies that there is no implicit trust, which means in our network, in our security, everything needs to be authenticated and authorized. There has to be a continuous monitoring, authorization, authentication of those resources. Quickly to point out some of the products that we have actually, quickly on the, we have something called Edge firewall that includes things like DDoS, network layer protection, and I'll talk a little bit more into the subsequent slides here. Another thing, if you look at our edge network, is what we call the security and compliance approach. We take the security and compliance and privacy very, very, very very seriously. If you look from a compliance perspective, we are fully certified. Our edge network is fully certified for SOC 2 and PCI DSS from a payment card industry perspective. When it comes to the user data, we are fully compliant for regulations like GDPR, for the regulations like in California, CCPA, when it comes to preserving the user data, that they do not cross the national boundaries here. I won't spend too much time here, but there is a quick poll question here. If you can take 30 seconds of your time. In the earlier segment, there were several issues that were identified. If you can kind of point out if there is anything in particular that you have encountered in a network, then we can go further. Wow, I think we probably might have seen these issues in the network, but maybe not by the same kind of tokens as it's indicated here, hijacking, leaks, and spoofing perspective. But keeping it aside, looks like let's talk about how Azion is actually taking care of some of these issues in Azion's edge network. So here is something. Azion network, which is connected to over 3,000 plus ASNs, is exchanging traffic with thousands of other networks. So it's no surprise that we have taken this, very, very concrete steps as outlined in the MANRS recommendation to ensure really that this routing security and some of the network controls, not just at the network and routing level, but also at the application level, are actually implemented in our network stack actually. So if you go there, these are some of the things that we are doing when based on the MANRS recommendation here. Before that, let me make it a point here. When it comes to routing on Azion network, our routing decisions are very carefully based on things like latency, things like throughput, availability data from net flows, what we call and the RUM data, RUM, which is basically real user monitoring data, as well as based on the load and the user locations and edge kind of node conditions, whether they're up or down, etc., etc. On top of that, we implement some of these recommendations, the 5 or 6 recommendations in terms of actions that were outlined earlier. For example, the number one being on the filtering side, we implement very sort of what we call the whitelist filtering, and the granularity can be at the level of the prefix to really ensure what we call the correctness of your announcement. You are who you say you are, basically. The spoofing, anti-spoofing controls, actually. Things like preventing packets who may have sort of illegitimate IP addresses from leaving your network, what we call the egress filtering, actually. After I've talked about the coordination, so on your website, we have an up-to-date contact information where you know who to talk to if there is any problems that comes up. Validation, basically, which basically means publicly announcing some of those ASNs and prefixes that were advertised to the external parties. And finally, the promotion for the MANRS. That's one of the key hallmarks that we are doing and working with MANRS to make sure our partners, our peering ISPs, etc., are aware of some of the things that they need to implement in their network while connecting to us. So in a sense, I think, as you can see here, Azion offers one of the best performance and security that is needed on an edge perspective, whether it's being able to reach any node to any node in the Europe and Americas within 30 milliseconds, or making sure that there's no single point of failure, or making sure how to prioritize your sort of, I would say, your mission critical traffic, or at the end of the day, really kind of taking care of some of those application layer attacks and DDoS attacks, making sure there's no account takeovers, there's no credential stuffing, et cetera, et cetera. So with the Azion Secure Edge Network, you can actually leverage this whole platform. At the end of the day, that what you need is to build the new serverless applications without worrying about any of the existing underlying hardware infrastructure, helping you really accelerate in your journey for digital transformation. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Victor.
Wonderful, AJ. Thank you so much. FTAB, also thank you for your presentation. And before we get into the Q&A, we have here contact information. So if you guys have any questions, need anything regarding to what you saw today, feel free to reach out to MANRS through their website or to Azion. You can contact us directly for a demo too through contact@azion.com, and we can start a conversation. But let's get into our Q&A. We have a couple questions here, and the first one that I want to ask goes directly to you, FTAB. Out of various threats like rel injection, hijacking, and the others, which one is the most serious in your opinion?
Of course, we consider route hijack is the most serious one, where someone else start claiming to be you or your network, and of course taking all the traffic from you, and of course disrupting your services. And if the services you're providing are financial services, then of course disrupting the financial services of your customers, and may end up stealing some of the assets. So this is, of course, it has real life consequences. Of course, it has financial consequences. So it is a very major impact. So that's why a lot of network operators take it very seriously, because it is a reputational problem. So route hijack, I would still consider as the biggest threat for the internet. Of course, the other things are important when your traffic moves from different direction, which is the route leak. But of course, route hijack comes up as the top most important incident.
Got it. Wonderful. Thank you so much. This next question goes to AJ. AJ, do you guys at Azion have any ISP partner program?
Absolutely, actually, Victor, that's a very timely question because we've launched this program, what we call the ASEAN Network Appliance Program, where our partners actually kind of sort of agree to co-locate those ASEAN servers within their access networks here, actually. And obviously, the advantage and the benefit to our partners is basically they get to subscribe and receive some of the data and optimizing some of the latency using the ASEAN network. So I would really encourage, if there are any ISPs or XPs or tier one service provider on the call, please go check out the program called ANA, which is ASEAN Network Appliance. Lots of information on our website, or feel free to contact anybody within the sales at ASEAN too.
Wonderful. And I think going through, connecting this, your answer through the next question here is, it's kind of broad, but why do we need the edge computing?
Oh, I'm assuming I can take that question actually, Victor. It's a pretty interesting question. Why do we care about edge computing actually? And I think if you look at the cloud 10 years ago, at that time, cloud was basically used for, cost cutting. And then over the time, it evolved into efficiency. And now what we're calling is the future of cloud is actually edge. That's how the industry perceives the edge actually. But if you look at some of the applications that's been happening today, quite a lot of them are latency sensitive application where it doesn't make sense to send the data all the way to the cloud. You look at the autonomous cars or AI, machine languages, etc. Or you look at things, another factor to consider in the edge computing, which is pretty major, is if you look at the cost of compute versus cost of bandwidth. Cost of bandwidth is going much higher than the cost of compute, which means if you're sending too much data to the cloud and not processing it closer to the users, it's going to be a lot more expensive there. Obviously, the third thing is obviously compliance and regulations. People want to keep the data closer to where they are. They don't want to, some of the things like GDPR and CCPA I was talking are extremely important from a privacy perspective, and edge computing really helps that. And last thing comes down to really the availability of the network here. If your connection, let's say to cloud is broken, but if you're using or you're leveraging edge computing, the processing can still go on, as opposed to waiting some of those outages you might have seen in some major websites in some of the CDN providers in the industry. So many benefits of leveraging of edge computing as you start putting some of the new use cases and applications.
Awesome, AJ. Thank you so much. Well, guys, that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for your time, for the presence. Again, AJ, FTAB, thank you for the awesome stuff you guys brought today. We'll have this webinar on our YouTube channel too. And shortly we'll send an email just asking a couple questions about the webinar itself, if the information we're bringing to you guys is relevant, if you guys have any other, you guys want to see anything else throughout the webinars that we put together. But again, thank you, AJ, thank you, FTAB, thank you everyone that was present here today. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, a wonderful week, and see you next time. Bye-bye.